Hello, and welcome everyone to the 2021 Kensington Move Out Gathering. My name is Dr. Anthony Guastella, and I am the founder and director of On Your Feet Detroit, an action-based nonprofit that wants to help people experiencing homelessness in Detroit. I am so excited that you're here today, and I'm going to be sharing some ways that you can find your voice and make the biggest impact. A little bit about me before we get started. I am a husband, married to my college sweetheart, Lauren. We've been married for 3 years now, and it has been such a joy being married to Lauren. We have so many great memories from college, and it's kind of like college never ended for me. I really credit her with helping me become the man I am today, and really helping On Your Feet Detroit become what it is today. I am also a father to an amazing little girl, Greta. She just turned 1 year old, and she already has daddy wrapped around her fingers. Lauren and I are also excited to announce that we will be having our second child in the end of September coming up. 2 under 2, pray for me. On top of that, as I said, I'm a doctor. I'm a PhD trained scientist. I got my PhD studying brain tumor metabolism down at Wayne State University School of Medicine. And it's so funny because my PhD, although it was in science, is really one of the main reasons I started On Your Feet Detroit. Because going down to school, I grew up in Rochester Hills in the suburbs, and my experience in Detroit was a Tigers game or a Red Wings game. And going to school day in and day out and seeing the struggles of the unhoused who were on the streets, especially during the brutal winters in Michigan, just kept eating at me. And that's what really helped me launch On Your Feet Detroit. It was seeing something that was right in front of me, right on my way to work, that really motivated me to take a step. This picture here, I'm a really happy dad. I got to bring Greta to her first On Your Feet Detroit event, where 45 people a couple weeks ago helped us make over 200 backpacks that we took to the South Oakland Warming Center that the Birmingham campus helps run, as well as the Detroit Rescue Mission Men's Shelter down in Detroit, where not only did we take them backpacks, but because of the generous support of our donors, we were able to throw them a Super Bowl party with appetizers from Chili's and some other fun snacks and drinks to make a great night. So a little bit more about On Your Feet Detroit. I started this mission in 2015 just by handing some small bags out of my truck and handing out some lunches with my family. It was in 2018 that we officially launched as an organization, and to date, we have handed out over 1,200 warming bundles, which are backpacks filled with essential gear to keep people warm, like gloves and hats, hoodies, things like that. We have also served over 300 people food and beverages at events we've hosted. And to date, we have over 130 volunteers. And what an honor it has been to lead this mission. Now, early on, one thing that Lauren and I really wanted to make clear was, what did we believe in? What did On Your Feet Detroit stand for? And so we wrote down some words. We put it on paper, and we call this our call to action. So I want to read this to you. We recognize that every human has an innate need for human connection. Hasn't COVID showed us that? We seek and acknowledge people who are overlooked and give them a voice. We believe everyone deserves compassion and kindness regardless of their circumstances. We equip and activate our community to revitalize Detroit. We strive to eradicate misconceptions about those experiencing homelessness. We do not aim to fix all the problems of the world, but together, we can take a step in the right direction. Get on your feet, Detroit, and join our mission. And man, if that doesn't get me as excited as it did the first day we wrote it, I love hearing this because that is our passion. I know we can't fix everything, but we can take a step in the right direction. So if I were to evaluate my 6 years of experience helping people who are unhoused, and if I could distill it down into 4 steps, that if I had to redo everything again, this is what I would do now. These are my 4 steps. Find your voice. You need to know who you are and who you were made to help to really find that voice that was uniquely yours. You need to set goals You need to set small, attainable goals at first and have big, lofty dreams to chase after to keep you excited. You need to start slow. You don't want to get burnt out. You don't want to do what I do, which is dive head in and just go too fast, too quick. Take your time. Great things take time. And lastly, make an impact. I think it's so important that we realize that we can't do it all on our own. Number one, that's a lot of time. We have limited time here on earth. So to make the biggest impact, we need to invite others in to join our mission and help with our cause. So finding your voice. The most important thing we can do to start finding our voice, this unique voice that we've been given, is to ask the question, what's your story? Now, we've obviously lived our lives and we know what's happened, but if you're anything like me, life is going by at 1,000 miles an hour and you barely have time to catch your breath. How many times have you sat down with your story and really reflected on it? So right now, get out a piece of paper, grab a pen, and draw a line, straight line across the paper. On the left, you're gonna have your birth, and on the right, you're gonna have right now, this moment where you're watching me. And in between there, I want you to draw some highlights, whether you have to break it down by year, by decade, by elementary, middle school, high school, however you want to break it down, whether you want to draw symbols, if you want to write a few paragraphs, if you love writing. This is not an assignment. There's no right or wrong way to do this. This is about you and finding your unique voice, so it's going to be unique to you. When you're doing this, don't try and sugarcoat it. Don't try and only put down the good things. Put down the bad things. Put down anything that comes to mind. And remember that the more authentic you are, the more true to yourself you are right now, the more of an impact you can make, because you're going to find out who you were meant to help. Now that we've written out our story, the next thing we need to do is we need to examine our story. We need to really sit and think about some possibly tough questions. We need to reflect on our story. It's taking purposeful time to look back and to evaluate where we were, where we've come from, what we've overcome, and where we want to go. So some things while you're reflecting to keep in mind are there more positive or more negative memories that you wrote down? I think it's such a helpful first step to just look at that simple question, good versus bad. If you see more negative memories, maybe challenge yourself. Try to find those positive moments from your life. It's so much easier to find a bad memory than it is a good one, but the good ones are worth chasing after. Now, as you're reflecting on your story, you've looked at the good, the bad. How would you describe yourself? Is it a positive word? Were you a champion? Were you a lighthouse? Were you a warrior? Were you a summiter? Did you overcome a lot of obstacles? Who were you when you look back at your story? Or do you have a negative emotion, a negative word that you associate with yourself, like a failure or a loser, a loner? I was too loud. I had to be quiet. I was too high energy. What word comes to mind when you look at your story? Now, not to focus on the negatives, let's look at some positives. When you were at your best, what were you doing right? Were you exercising? Were you eating healthy? Were you hanging out with certain friends? Were you watching certain shows? Anything. What were you doing when you were at your best? Because this is going to be a long journey and it's going to get tough. You're going to get down sometimes and you're going to need to recenter yourself and to re-excite yourself. So really think about that. Now, I really want to challenge you as you're thinking about all this, as you're processing this, as you drew out your timeline, come up with someone that you can share those with. The words you came up for yourself, the timeline. Who can you show? Do you have a close friend, a family member, maybe a spouse? Maybe you're dating someone and it's getting serious and you're thinking about marrying them. Maybe you should share your story with them, because if they can't love all parts of you, are they really worth marrying? That's really when we take it to the next level, when we realize that as you talk with other people and you hear their stories, we all went through a lot of the same things. A lot of us have pain. A lot of us made mistakes. A lot of us had to overcome things. And that's what's so beautiful about it. Sharing your experience, there's power in that. So as you're reflecting, keep going deeper. All this is about being authentic to yourself and finding your unique voice. Some things to think about are who and what brings you joy. I know for me, who brings me joy is number 1, Lauren. I love hanging out with Lauren. Number 2 is Greta, and she's only number 2 because she's a little bit more work at 1 year old. What brings me joy is totally easy. A hammock and a spring day in Michigan in my backyard with a little breeze, some earbuds in. That's pure joy. That's pure Michigan. What brings you joy? Who brings you joy? Really think about these questions. What are some of your strengths? Write it down. I know for me, some of my strengths are public speaking and humor. At the end of a conversation with someone experiencing homelessness, I can normally get a smile out of them and crack a joke. Those are some of my gifts. What are your gifts? Do you have the gift of compassion? Do you just have this overwhelming love inside for everyone else? Do you have the gift of forgiveness? What is your unique gift that you can use to help someone out? Start thinking, too, as you're looking at your story, who do you want to bring joy to? And I think a good way to get into this question is to first ask yourself, what are hardships you've overcome and now can help others do the same? So for an example, my parents got divorced when I was in middle school, 6th grade. I have a great relationship with my dad, my stepmom, my mother, my stepdad. I love my family. But going through it, I would have never known that when I was in college working at a daycare, that I would be confronted with a young man whose parents were going through a divorce right around the same age as me. I saw him begin acting out at the daycare and start just being someone that he wasn't. And other teachers would look at him and get mad and say, oh, you should settle down, stop being like this. But I could see the hurt little boy inside who was scared and was upset. And I knew that anger comes from fear and pain. And I knew that if I stepped into his pain and told him, hey, I see you. I've been there. I know what you're going through and I know how you feel. I know it's not the same, but listen, I can give you some hope that it's going to get better. Now, I don't know where he ended up or how he's doing, but I'd like to think that that personal connection made a difference for him. So think about your hardships. Have you overcome your alcoholism, a drug addiction? Were you abused when you were younger? Did you not feel loved? What are these things that you have overcome that you now can step into someone else's life and make a difference with? So to wrap this up, your voice is your gifts, your pain, your experience, and your perspective. All that comes together to give you your unique identity that you can use to change the world. And so as we begin to find our voices, and this isn't going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be a one and done type of thing, okay? You're really stepping into the arena, as Brene Brown likes to say. You're stepping into figuring out who you are and what your voice is. And once you find that voice, you have to show love. Through all of my years of reading the scriptures, of studying Jesus' life, I've come to realize that love is the greatest commandment. And don't take my word for it. Let's see what Jesus has to say. So this is Matthew 22, verse 36 through 40. Now, a little backstory. This is where Jesus is being tested by some Pharisees, some religious scholars of the day, and they're trying to catch Jesus in something that would go against the law. So in this day in the law, all commandments were equal. So they're trying to trick Jesus. So let's see what happens. Verse 36, Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses? Jesus replied, You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, with all of you. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. How interesting is that? Equally as important to the first is to love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. Jesus is saying, plain and simple, love is foundational for everything you do. Trying to follow the commandments doesn't matter if you don't love your God, your neighbor, which if you read the scriptures means everyone, and love your neighbors as yourself. And that's the part that I think is so crucial, is that Jesus had the wisdom to know that you can only love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. You know, part of why I wasn't successful with On Your Feet Detroit in my early years was because I didn't fully love myself. I didn't fully find my voice or work through my past pains. And that's why this is a journey. We're continuing to grow. You know, I think, I'm helping all these people who are experiencing homelessness by giving them a backpack. But I'm the one who's actually benefiting from it too. I'm growing. I'm learning to love the parts of me. And love is really the greatest commandment. And even if you're not a believer, how much better would the world look if we all loved each other? I think after this last election and COVID, two things we shouldn't be talking about, right? Because there's so much tension in that moment. But what if we all just loved each other? Whether you're religious or not religious, we just loved. Wouldn't that be a different place? And honestly, it starts with loving yourself. And you can only do that once you've written out your story, you've released these negative emotions you associate with yourself. You stop listening to the lies that we all continuously tell ourselves. I know it's so easy for me to feel like a failure when I do something wrong and to just start changing that inner narrative. After you love yourself, you can start to take on a posture of love towards others. Husbands, what would it look like if you served your wife dinner first or made dinner and showed her love that way? What would it look like, kids, if when your brother or sister took one of your toys, instead of hitting them or yelling at them, you shared and showed love and thought like, man, when you're my age, you're going to really wish you had more of those moments with your brothers and sisters? What would it look like if we took on a posture of love and when someone cuts us off, we don't give that special wave or yell at them, but we just smiled and said, they must have somewhere important to go? These little steps we can take and putting this posture of love on can make a huge impact. And really, all of this comes together to help you be passionate about what you're doing, whether it's passionate about being a parent, in your career, as a kid, in school, whatever. Passion is key because it's going to keep you engaged and it's going to bring others on board. So now that we're starting to show love, we've started to kind of figure out what our voice is, we need to start asking, who do we feel called to? When I say show love to someone, does anyone come to mind? Maybe it's your coworkers, your family, a certain friend. Maybe it's people struggling with depression or an eating disorder or alcoholism. Maybe it's not a person. What if who you're called to serve is a city? What if you're passionate about Pontiac, about Detroit, about Flint? Figuring out who or where we're called to really can come from when we just start asking ourselves, who comes to mind, right? We don't want to make this huge change. We want to try to identify who's in front of us, who is already in my life that I can just add extra into. And again, I really want to encourage you that this isn't a single person's journey, that you're going to need people to join you along this journey. And again, ask that close friend, that spouse, that family member, what do they think about your answers to this? And it's always so cool to see what other people can see in you that you can't always see in yourself. So we've found our voice, we're starting to show love, we're starting to ask ourselves, who is that person, that group of people, that city? Where do we feel called to show our unique love? Next, we need to set some goals. It's so easy to get excited and forget that it takes steps, it takes actions to make a difference. So let's set some initial goals, short-term goals. Make it a 2-month goal. Take 2 months, don't try and do this sooner. 2 months to identify organizations that are doing what you want to do. So looking back for homelessness, I would search on Google and I should come up with a list of all the different organizations who are doing great things. Elevate Detroit with their community barbecues down in Detroit every Saturday, 1 p.m. Amazing work. The Wave Project, a group of people who are taking mobile shower units into the streets of Detroit for the unhoused. How many of you have taken a shower today? You don't think of how much of a privilege that is. And for people living on the streets, they don't always get that. And Wave Project is helping out. So really figure out who is in the space that you want to help and go volunteer. A great place to start is the Move Out Network. I have been coming to Kensington since, 2001. And I can honestly say wholeheartedly, the Move Out Network and the Move Out movement is the best thing that's happened to Kensington. This idea that we're not just sitting in the chairs, but we're going out into the streets like Jesus did with his own life. He walked the streets, he got out there, and he showed love to people where they were. So volunteer, see how it is, and realize that you might not be called to start a nonprofit and lead a group of people. Maybe you need to join someone else's mission and help change the world that way. Also, while you're volunteering, ask questions and share your dreams. You'd be surprised how excited people will get to hear that someone else has a passion similar to them and they'll want to help you. It can also help you learn about other organizations and really fine-tune that dream of yours. So again, I encourage you to find a volunteer opportunity. Now, long-term goals. You need to set some long-term goals up front because you need to have something that's going to keep you driving, something you're going to keep chasing after. So similar to our call of action for On Your Feet Detroit, what's your driving force? What's your call to action? Also, what's your big lofty goal? For me, my big lofty goal is to open warming centers across Detroit as well as a homeless shelter that's unlike anything out there today. Now, I know I can't just go buy a building and open it up for warming shelters. I need to take some steps to get there. I need to learn about the community I'm serving and actually figure out what their needs are. I don't know how to serve people on the streets the best because that's not my life. I need to engage with them. I need to build credibility with the public that I know what I'm doing. I can be a good steward of the resources I'm given. So it takes time, but setting that big lofty goal will help keep you going forward when times get tough. And really ask yourself, what does success look like? I know for me, in my interactions with people experiencing homelessness, success is a smile on their face. It's letting them know that they are seen and they are loved. That's what success is for me. What's success look like for you? So now we found our voice, we've set some goals. Start slow, okay? Don't burn yourself out right off the bat in trying to do too much. You want this to become part of your everyday life. For me, I wake up, I make the bottles, I get my daughter over to my in-laws' house, I do work, and in between I'm answering On Your Feet Detroit emails. I'm editing the website. I'm looking for new suppliers. I'm looking for new partners. It's just a part of my everyday life now. If you try to start off and change the world right off the bat, you'll become discouraged and you'll say, oh, what's the point? So start slow. I love seeing these pictures and reflecting on where it all began. This is my family. You can see Lauren here as well. And this was Christmas 2015. We just made a bunch of bagged lunches, a slice of pizza, some socks, different items that we thought people could use. And we just drove around Detroit and just handed out lunches to anyone we saw. They weren't necessarily all homeless. Some people were on their way to work and were like, hey, thanks, I have a lunch now. Next, when I lived in Ferndale, I started driving to work. And I drove by the bridge at 8 Mile and Woodward. I don't know if any of you have driven by there. It's this overpass. There's generally 4 to 6 people either living under the bridge or on the corners begging for money. On my drive to work one day, I said, I need to do something. And so I stopped at a Dunkin' Donuts. I got a dozen donuts, a box of Joe, and I went to the corner that day. I was a little late to work, and I just said hello. I said, hi, my name's Anthony. What's your story? And it was so amazing to see something that I was so scared to do. It took a lot of courage, but on the other side of that was so much reward. It was so rewarding. And that's what really started this, was just these little steps. I had goals initially, talk to 2 people who were homeless that week. That would be one of my goals. And to date, I've had hundreds, maybe thousands of interactions with people living on the streets. So it's a small step that you can take. And starting slow is so important. Once you start slow, you have found your voice, you are meeting your goals, invite other people in. To make an impact, I can't be doing this all on my own, right? A few years ago, while I was finishing my PhD, I actually did the internship here at Kensington. It was an amazing time of growth. And what was amazing about it, too, is it gave me the space and the time to be able to drive down to Detroit and to just walk the streets. As a father of soon-to-be 2, full-time job, I don't have that time anymore. And so I need other people to join my mission to help me make that impact, right? And so asking people in, it really started, this is our house in Ferndale where we just made backpacks and I put them in my truck. You can see some pictures of my friends here over the years. This was an event that we threw on Black Friday after all my family members from across the country came into town. We made backpacks, and instead of consuming on Black Friday, we wanted to give back. So we made backpacks and lunches, and we just drove around Detroit and we handed it out to people. It's so cool. Something that, again, started with just me, my immediate family. I then invited cousins, aunts, and uncles to join. And then the next year, we grew even more. We had even more volunteers the next year as people heard my message, as people heard what we stood for, what we wanted to do. People jumped on board wholeheartedly. And again, what does success look like to me? It's smiles. And look at all the smiles on everyone's face in all these pictures. This brings me so much joy. It was really tough when COVID first hit. It was a moment, I think, that took a lot of us by surprise. We didn't all know how to react. And with On Your Feet Detroit, we had to really change and adapt to what was happening. So instead of meeting people on the streets where that just wasn't safe to do, we met people where they were, at homeless shelters. Through donations and the support of Kensington, we received a move-out grant. We were able to collect essential supplies, cleaning supplies, water. We took board games to the shelters. We took snacks, fresh produce, yogurts. And we wanted people to know that even though you're in a shelter, we love you and we see you. And it's been a really exciting time to see how, even though our dream is to help people during the winter time, that's where it all kind of started, how it's growing and adapting. We threw a Super Bowl party this year. We, as I said, had 45 volunteers. When a stranger, a person who's never met you before, resonates with what you're doing, it's so empowering, and it just makes you want to keep going and going. And so that is what I've learned in the last 6 years. It seems pretty straightforward, right? Find your voice, set goals, start slow, show love, and make an impact. But it's going to be a lifelong journey, and I'm so excited that you have chose to start that journey today. And I challenge you, everyone watching this, I challenge you, don't leave this weekend the same. Don't leave this weekend that person who's going to get fired up for a couple days and then 2 weeks later it fizzles out. Don't be that person. COVID has taught me that our time on earth is so precious. I miss all the family gatherings. And so take this time where we can be at home, be with the people we love, and use this time before it all opens up, because it will. It's all going to open up again. But take this time to find your voice so when we go back out, you can make an impact bigger than you thought. And with that, I commend you all, and I pray for all of you to truly go find your voice and make the biggest impact you can.